Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cisco Optics Podcast, where we talk about pluggable optics for networks. Cisco's 8000 series router changed the game in high-end routers thanks in large part to the Silicon One ASIC. It also introduced to the industry some of the first 400 gig ports along with Cisco's QSFP-DD form factor pluggable optics. This is episode 31, and we continue our conversation with Amar Khan, product management leader for the 8000 series router. In this episode, we talk about why high-quality optics is more important for routing these days. Amar received his BSEE at the University of Oklahoma and an MBA from Santa Clara University. He started his career as a member of the technical staff at an ASIC emulation startup where he worked on cutting-edge ASIC and FPGA designs. His first foray into networking system design was at another startup based out of Massachusetts. He then moved to Broadcom through the company's acquisition and launched and managed products with over $250 million in revenue. In 2010, he moved to Ericsson's IP division and defined their Edge router line with an annual revenue of over $150 million. Amar joined Cisco in 2018 and has been with the 8000 series router team for over 4.5 years. He's worked on various areas of the 8000 product line, including fixed and modular systems, line cards, fabrics, optics, platform security, and more. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast. On Apple Podcast, you would click the plus button at the top now. We're part of the Cisco Podcast Network. Check out our blog at blogs.cisco.com and search on hashtag Cisco Optics Blog, all one word, no hyphen and no spaces. You'll find podcast notes and links there too. For our YouTube playlist, go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. And for product information, go to cisco.com/go/optics. And now, join me as I talk with Amar Khan. So you had a lot of experience. You're talking before about your wealth of experience at Ericsson, Broadcom, at the ASIC level, as a product manager. Has optics been all of a sudden more significant or more important or more on the top of mind when you're doing the 8000 router than in the previous experience? If so, then why?
Absolutely. Yes, this is a brilliant question. This is a great question, and this is something that I always discuss with customers. When we do get a chance, because I want to understand what their take is. Well, Pat, the number one thing is that when we were dealing with systems, right, when we were in 40 gig, 10 gig, 100 gig, optics had an important role, right, and at that time, very significant role, and of course they were important at that point in time. But now I think things are changing, right, as this traffic or the data continues to increase, and our customers are realizing that they're putting more and more data onto the ports, and at the same time, just the nature of the business that we're in and our customers are in, data is no longer just commodity data. It's important. It's an asset that company wants to manage, and there are a lot of transactions that are happening on the internet that are very significant.
Well, what do you mean by commodity versus asset?
I mean, like, for example, to me, commodity is like, I'm just doing internet web browsing. I'm just watching YouTube videos. I don't care if I have to see disruptions. I don't care if something breaks in the internet. I know something is going to do. Then there'll probably some way my service provider will fix it. And if I do lose data, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, let's think about this. If I'm making a transaction and I'm selling my stocks, or I'm buying bonds, or I'm doing some other derivatives or some another financial instrument, I'm doing transaction. I want to make sure that the transaction goes through, and I'm assured that everything works okay. If I'm transferring funds and I'm doing things like that, or I'm doing other things, so that are important. And similarly, if you look at all the companies today, including Cisco, by the way. So we have this very strong business to business B2B network with our with our suppliers, with our partners, and where a lot of transactions are happening very, very fast all the time, especially with our manufacturing partners, right? And similarly, other companies are doing the same thing. So our customers are offering services to their customers, enterprises that are doing something similar, where there's a lot of business to business transactions that are happening in the background. And So data is an asset that needs to be protected, and at the same time, you want to make sure that every hardware or whatever you're using, is secured from a supply chain perspective, which Cisco does very well, by the way. And then then we want to make sure that whatever component you're using is reliable,
Hmm. But for
right? And
for this asset type data, would the difference show up in the form of like a service level agreement or something, or?
exactly, it's a service level agreement. So the key component, the key piece is that I want to have service level agreement. But at the same time, I want to make sure that the underlying hardware, whatever my network is
Mhm.
reliable, that I can trust, and all the components that I'm getting from my vendor, they stand behind it. That these components are reliable. They will function properly, and that is to me, after talking to so many different customers, is a very important
Okay,
um,
so
part of
so
business,
let me
doing
just see if
business
I
with our
can
customers.
summarize and recap the last minute. The
Mhm.
difference today, you're saying, is now data is changing. It's going from commodity, like watching a YouTube video. Although I would argue, if I'm watching Ozark and the connection cuts out, I'd be like pretty upset. But
I
anyway,
will be upset.
but I don't have much leverage. I'm just one guy. Versus
You're
an
right.
asset,
Right.
which is something that's like mission critical, like for a
Mission
financial
critical.
application, or I don't know, medical, something
Yes.
something where there's a service level agreement in place where, like, hey, there's a big consequence if the link fails, right?
That's right. Yes.
And in order to support this highly valued asset, you need reliable hardware. So my question
Absolutely.
is, we've had we've had banks around doing stuff
Hmm.
over networks for a long time. What wasn't this asset
Right.
type data? Didn't that exist before? Like, it didn't just pop up
It
yesterday,
did,
did
but
it?
correct. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all there, right? So the thing is that the point that I'm making is that as we increase the speed, you're going from 100 gig to
Mm-hmm.
400 gig. So in the routers, for example, optics are a large component of the overall the product, right? And now with this innovation that was driven by Acacia Cisco team, is the pluggable digital coherent
Mm-hmm.
optics, right? I mean, so reliability is becoming more and more critical. You want to make sure that these optics, which make up a big component of the network, are reliable, and because there is so much traffic going through them, 400 gig, 800
Ah.
gig, and you cannot afford these optics, because if my network was all confined to one
Mm-hmm.
room and it's one router, then I don't have a problem. But I have a network that has a very large footprint, and I'm here in San Jose, but I could have a network in Illinois, or in Chicago, in Boston. So because you have such a large footprint, in fact, this is something that I was discussing with a customer yesterday. They were talking about these
Mm-hmm.
operational challenges, and so the operational challenges are that your network has a very large footprint. If you have these optics that are plugged everywhere in all these routers that you have deployed network wide, and if they're flapping, and if they're not pushing traffic, and if they're broken, and
Mm-hmm.
something has gone down, and they're not reliable, then you have a problem. Because you need to, number one, fix them,
Mm-hmm.
and number one, you have to always look for maintenance windows where you can go in and fix these issues. So that is important. That's why, to me, the most important part is that how do you make sure a component or a transceiver is reliable? You have to put it through
Mm-hmm.
qualification. You have to make sure that it's qualified, and you have reports to back it up. You have copious amount of data to show to customers, because our customers do have
Mm-hmm.
asked for it, that how much testing has been done and what have been. So there is a lot of diligence that our customers do, and I've noticed that we have always come up to their exacting standard, whatever standard that they have, and that to me is very unique and distinctive about what we do. And I think that level of judiciousness and scrutiny is only going to increase in the future, and our customers are going to even demand more.
So they're paying more
And I've
attention to
seen
optics
situations.
now, and
Yes, they are
the
paying a
bar
lot
the
more
bar is
attention
being
to
raised.
optics. The bar has been raised, and I have been in situations, and I've seen it where inadvertently some customers have used the optics, unqualified
Mm-hmm.
optics, and they've had problems. They have problems with CTLE tuning. I remember one customer
Mm-hmm.
specifically, we had to go in and solve that for them. It was a third party optics, not a qualified optics, and we ended up doing all the heavy lifting and fixing the problem for them. And the other time that we had a problem where we had these AOC cables that non-qualified AOC cables
Mm-hmm.
that a customer used, and they just kept flapping.
Yeah, those annoying flaps. I mean, I think people
Yes,
don't realize it does happen. Uh,
it does, and it could happen for a number
yeah.
of different reasons, right, Pat? I mean, in our qualification, we I know we do a lot of work where we look at things, signal integrity, small minor things that people would not even think important can really come back and hit you hard. So that process that we have in place to qualify things um, is
Mm-hmm.
very good. And for the digital coherent optics, it's even more complicated, right? It's more complicated because now you have to worry about tunability, you have to worry about alarms, you have
Mm-hmm.
to worry about performance parameters and what do they report and how do you reconcile values and all that stuff. And we do that level of diligence and scrutiny as well. So there is a lot more work goes into it to make sure that all of that works together. And this is where I've noticed that and with 400 gig optics, and
Mm-hmm.
as we move and venture into 800 gig and beyond, I think it's going to get more and more challenging. But what we have done is that we have, first of all, TMG has a very nice setup to do the qualification.
Mm-hmm.
But now, another thing that I've noticed is that our group, the routing groups and TMG, it's more collaborative. We have to work even more closely together than we had been
Yeah,
doing
I mean that's the
before.
benefit of being in the same company rather than being two
Exactly.
different companies,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Totally.
So
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand better what changed
Yeah.
over time. That was the third part of my conversation with Amar Khan. Next time, we'll get more into optics and routing and why the introduction of 400G was such a big step. Subscribe to this podcast, and we'd really appreciate you helping to get the word out. Share this with friends and colleagues that come to mind when you think of network technology and optics. And leave a review on Apple Podcast. We're also on all the other major podcast platforms. You may see the Cisco Podcast Network come up when you search for Cisco Optics Podcast. That's where we live. And you can find other great podcasts there too. Also, check out the Cisco Optics blog at blogs.cisco.com and search on hashtag Cisco Optics blog, no spaces and no hyphens. We also have educational videos on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. Thank you for listening. This is Pat Chow, Product Manager at Cisco Optics. The next episode is the fourth part of my conversation with Amar Khan. Until next time.